Hey guys, today we're cracking into my Jet City 100 HDM head. If you've never been inside one of these, super impressive, especially for the price. Got all these big 1 watt resistors, nice poly caps throughout. Some ceramic caps in through here. Not my favorite parts, but they're fine. Nice big filter caps. There's nothing wrong with this amp right now. These are, if you have any experience with these are really super reliable. The only problem I've really seen with any of these is on the 50 watt heads. I've seen this bias pot be bad. I don't know that I've ever seen that with the 100 watters or the little 20 watters. But that's it. That's the only problem I've really seen with any of these. What we're going to be doing to this one. So I've had this amp, personally had this amp side by side with Soldano Hot Rod 100 Plus. And they are, super close. Side by side, there's really, really very little difference. Especially when you consider the price difference. I think these new are around $650, $700, and the Soldano Hot Rod gets up into a couple $1,000 real quick, $3,000 maybe. I don't know. I haven't priced one. They're expensive. Excuse me. I've even done transformer swap in a couple of these for some people. So supposedly what I've read online is that when they were designing these, Mike Soldano was really, really picky to get the transformers just the way he wanted them for these. And I think that shows. Because I've had one guy, he bought, spent some real money on Mercury Magnetics transformers for one of these. And I was disappointed. He was disappointed. It really made the tiny difference. Putting, it was like $500, $600 of transformers that he put into a $500 or $600 amp. And it really didn't change that much. But what we're here to do today is I'm going to see how close I can make this amp to a Soldano SLO. This is the HDM version, so we get the depth mod already done. Like I say, I'm really pleased the transformers, the choke in these. I don't think it's... Personally, I've done replacements for people. I don't think it's worth it. So what I've done is I've just gone and downloaded the schematic for both amps, for the SLO 100 and for the Jet City. And if you look at both amps from the front panel, the first thing you'll notice is the Soldano has a couple little switches here over in here. And those are, they're a clean crunch switch and kind of a high cut switch for the low gain channel, and that's it. Other than that, it's really very few components inside these amps that are different values. The biggest differences are is in the power supply, and I'm going to do this in two stages. So I'm going to get all the signal chain stuff, all the preamp stuff done today. I've got all those parts. And I'm going to measure all our filter caps and stuff. And I'll just order all new caps for this. And we'll get the power supply as close as I can to the real deal. And we'll see what we end up with. So hopefully you can see this okay. So I've got the schematic here. And I've just kind of circled kind of right here. The circuit is where that clean crunch and bright normal switches would go. Our two gain pots are 500K in the SLO, but these are 1 meg in this, and that's fine. I'll leave those. Other than that, we're changing a couple capacitors, a couple resistors, different values. There's an input cap right here. That just goes away. The SLO doesn't have that. All this is all the same. Here, there's a mod to make, and that's one big complaint you see with these amps, is that the effects loop really only works with line level rack effects. So we add a resistor here, and we add a capacitor here. I've seen a couple different values people have used for these. I believe this capacitor goes away. Just a resistor here changed. Not a lot, very few changes. I'll probably, while I'm here and I'm going to be drilling holes in my chassis to put in those switches, I'll probably do the what's called the Warren Hayes mod, and that just bypass. It's just a kind of a treble bypass switch to kind of warm the amp up a little bit. That's a pretty simple mod though. Onto the output section, this next page of our schematic, the only thing different is these two capacitors here are a different value in the SLO. So that's just two capacitors to change. Simple, easy. The whole rest of the circuit is the same. Then we look at our power supply. So right here we've got these two 220 UF caps. In the SLO there's 4 of those. So really in this amp it's not going to be easy to put, to take these 2 caps out and put 4 in. But what we can do to get kind of the same effect is because these are 220 UF, so we'll see if we can take those out and put in 2 470 UF caps. And then these next 2 caps, these are 100 UF in the SLO. Those are 220 UF, so we'll get new caps there. The rest of the caps throughout the power supply, the Jet City actually has higher value caps than the SLO. So we'll probably actually leave those in place and just kind of bump up those early stages of the power supply. But like I say, right now I'm just going to measure those caps and figure out what components I can get that'll fit, and that'll be a next video to do the power supply. First step, I'm going to get this thing taken apart, get the circuit board out, and we'll look at it from there. Okay guys, I've got our circuit board loose. Just to make it easier, I did loosen all of our jacks on the back here. And I did unplug a couple of wires from our standby switch. Make sure just stop, take a moment, and take a picture. If you're unplugging anything over here, take a picture or label or do something so that you know where the wires came from. Then we're just going to make sure that the circuit board, we can move it around easily without, pulling any wires. A little dust on here, so we'll clean that up quick. It's an LED. This one lights up inside the cab. That's fun. I might play with that a bit. I might do like a chain of LEDs in it or change colors or something. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But for now, I'm gonna clean the circuit board up, and then we'll look at our first components that we're gonna change. Okay, so we're just looking at where our mini switches need to go, and where we're going to be working with is, so that Warren Hayes mod is just a bypass for this cap. We're also going to change the value of this cap. while we're at it. And then that bright normal and clean crunch switch, that goes in place where this C28 and R42 are. And I do have the schematic for the Soldano that shows that little circuit, clean crunch, bright normal switches. And if I'm careful, there will be enough room to, if I get my holes in the right spots, there will be room to stack those two switches right there. Just have to be neat and tidy with drilling my holes. And then this one will just be another little switch right here in between crunch and overdrive. So I'll get those holes measured out and put in, and then we'll get the switches mounted, and we'll get those bits of the circuit done. Okay, I've got my holes made. 1, 2, 3. Make sure, measure, mark, be careful, make sure you get your holes where you want them. Nice and lined up straight. I did scratch a little bit here. That'll touch up easily though. Now that, and this is just the order of operations that I always like to go in. I always do chassis prep stuff first. You'll see I did put some tape on the transformer to make sure I didn't get any little bits of metal in there. Make sure you vacuum up, clean up your little bits of metal from drilling before you go further. These are actually going to be the last thing we do, because it's going to be easiest to wire these up once the chassis is back in, or once the circuit board is back in the chassis. So our first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at these C10 and 11. Should be 0.047. And that's these two here, which in this amp are 0.022. So we'll replace those, and as I go, I'm also going to do, hopefully I have enough, all the right parts to do all these ceramic caps, and just change those to better sounding caps. So I'll do that. I'll remove these. I'll see if I can find a cap for this guy, and we'll get those switched out first. Okay, so I got that done. I did find a WEMA box cap, 47 PF to drop in there. Next we're going to look at, on our circuit board, this C34, and on our schematic it's labeled R51, but on the circuit board it's actually R58. Neither of those components is there on the SLO circuit. So we're just going to remove those and jump over them. That'll be a quick, easy one. Okay, we've got our jumpers in place. The next thing we're going to look at is the effects level mod. It's just going to make it more friendly to pedals. So looking at R21, 2.2K, just adding a 25U cap. I've got a 22, that's close enough, just across R21. And that is right here next to our jumpers on the board that we just put in. And then R25, the instructions for the mod say to put a 1K resistor across that, but I mean, if we put two resistors in parallel, we come up with a 1.6K. So we're just going to take that resistor out, and we're just going to put a 1.6K resistor in there, and that'll do the same job. Okay, so we've got our cap added. Make sure you pay attention to polarity on that. Got that resistor swapped. Again, you could have just put the 1K resistor across the other one. This is just a little neater way to do it. The next thing we're going to look at is this R19. In this amp, it's 100K. In the SLO, it's 220K. So we're just going to swap that out, quick and easy. Okay, our next step is we're going to look at C21. So our original value is 470p. The SLO value is 0.001. But that's part of that Warren Hayes mod. So for now, we're just going to remove that part. And once we get everything back in the chassis, then that'll get dealt with. Camera's not focusing. Okay, after that, we'll look at R41, which is 1 meg. We're going to change that to 470K. And C27 is 0.001. We're going to go to 0.002 on that. Just matching parts values in the SLO. Then, and this is also, we're going to remove some parts on the normal channel just to get ready for wiring our switches in. And that's R42 and C28. So those will just get removed for now. And finally, and I'm going to do all this a little bit at the end here in one step. C33 just gets removed and a bus wire gets put in its place. So we'll get that done, and then we'll be ready to get everything back in the chassis. And actually, no, that's not correct. There's a few more ceramic caps in here that I'm going to check and see what parts I've got, just to put a little better sounding caps in those spots. But we'll go over that next. I'll get these steps done. I'll get all this stuff changed and removed, and then we'll look at those remaining caps. Okay, so there I've got R41 C27 replaced. Need to get a little more solder on that guy. And then I've got 42, 28, and 21 all removed because those will wire up to those switches. I removed C33, just put a jumper across it. Next I'm going to look at, I've got C14, 23, and 22, which are all ceramic caps, and we're going to get rid of those. If anything, really, C22 is just coming from power supply, so it's not necessarily a cap in your signal chain. So that one's maybe not necessary, not as necessary to replace, but the other two are in your signal chain and are going to affect the sound of your amp. So we're going to get those done. Like I say, get a little extra solder on that guy. Okay, I've got those three caps changed. I found a couple of poly caps and a mica cap over here. There's really not that much wrong with these ceramic caps. Most people prefer the way a poly or a mica cap sounds. It's not at all a surprise to see the ceramic caps in a budget amp, because they are tremendously reliable and tremendously cheap, where your traditional mica cap is tremendously expensive. Relatively new are the little these little WEMA box caps in really tiny values like this. So, and they're a really affordable component, and they've I mean, it's WEMA. They're great caps, and they're very affordable. So hopefully we'll see more of that and less of this in the future. But there's everything there. I'm just going to attach some lead wire to some of these points here for our components that go up to our toggle switches. Other than that, everything on the circuit board's done that we're going to do in this phase. So I'll get that prepped and get everything ready to go back in. Okay, I've got, so this, our .01 cap, I got the one end going into the board, and it's just coming out, piece of wire. Those two ends will go to our switch for that Warren Hayes mod. And then over here I've just got 2 lengths of wire. Those will go to our toggle switches on the low gain channel. Everything on the board should be done. Now's a good time to just give everything a good once over. Look at all your solder joints, make sure you're happy with everything. And then the board is ready to go back into the chassis. So I'm starting to work on our switching for our clean crunch and bright normal for the low gain channel. For the bright norm switch, I've got everything, because that's going to be our bottom switch here. So it's just easier to wire 470K resistor, 470 PF cap wired to that switch. Just easiest to do it before we get it in the amp. So that's done. That's ready to go. So we'll get this switch mounted, and then we'll put our other our bigger switch on top of that, and we'll get that all wired up. All right, so I'm just going to hold the camera on this for a minute. I've just drawn up a diagram of these 2 toggle switches for the clean crunch channel. Just kind of showing you what goes where. So this, you should be able to zoom in on this and pause the video. See where everything goes, get yours wired up. Okay, now I've got both switches in, and I'm just working from the bottom up, soldering everything to our top switch. I'll get that finished up and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, we've got both of those switches wired in for our clean crunch and our bright switch. Right here our 39K resistor needs grounded, and I found a convenient ground spot right here off of R38. So I use that. Next up, we'll wire in our Warren Hayes mod. This one's quick, easy. You're just switching this capacitor in and out. I'll get that wired up. Alright, so there's what that looks like. All those switches in. Everything's done on the amp. We've swapped all the parts values that we could to match the SLO schematic, except the power supply. That'll be our next video. I measured all the caps, so I know their lead spacing and their size, and I know how big of a physical size I can get. That'll be our next video. We'll also clean up some of this wiring for the transformers and stuff when we do that. But for now, we're just going to zip tie everything back together the way it was. We'll get it all put back together. Real quick, here's just a small handful of parts. Couple caps, some resistors. These were removed and those contacts were just bridged. Some small caps. 3 of these weren't really necessary to change. We just put in a little bit better quality parts. So there's really not much difference as far as the schematic goes between this and the SLO that we're trying to copy. Anyway, there it is. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe. I'll get parts ordered. We'll get the power supply done. Make this as absolutely close to an SLO on the cheap as we can. Thanks for watching.